Hello everyone, this is Steve Jackson with Imprintables Warehouse, and I'm here today on behalf of Great Garment Graphics and going to be presenting a webinar on maximizing heat-applied films and multimedia applications. This is part of Great Garment Graphics on-demand webinar series. We've got a lot of great presentations already and there's more to come, so please visit Great Garment Graphics for future presentations and see what they have coming up. But today we're going to talk about maximizing these heat-applied films, looking specifically at multimedia applications and how we can get a little bit more out of them for our customers, give them a little bit more pizzazz and style to their designs, and get a little bit more money out of it. So let's take a look at the next slide. What we're going to cover today is some of the different media types that are available through Imprintables Warehouse. We're going to be concentrating on the specialty type films, not your single CAD cut color films to where you're doing your regular work with maybe names and numbers or maybe a one or two color design, but specifically the different media films that are have a little bit of a specialty to them. We're going to take a look at some of the applications that this can work for and maybe talk about a couple that it doesn't really work very well for. Break down the cost and pricing. This is always a big topic that comes up whenever I'm talking to somebody about the different films, and specifically when we get into doing multimedia applications, because every time you put another layer of film on there, you're adding a little bit more cost to it. So we need to really break that down and understand how much cost it's adding and where we can charge for that cost and the perceived value to the customer. We're going to jump into Corel Draw after that and look at the designs themselves and the artwork and how to break it up so that we can, when we send it to the cutter, that we have the different films already set and we're not duplicating something we've done before. And we're going to talk about the production of the designs, the physical end of it, of where we're putting it together, and some things that you might want to consider when you're putting these together, especially if you're doing a lot of different layers on this, and some tips and tricks there. So to look at the different films, the first one that we have come up here is Spectra Patterns. This is a great film that we have available. Adds a lot of pizzazz to designs, and what I mean by that is it's a printed film, and you can see in the left-hand bottom corner here some of the different samples and different films that we have available in this. There's all sorts of patterns, so say 4th of July is the next holiday coming up around here, except for Mother's Day and Father's Day, of course. But we have this red, white, and blue one here, or maybe the school has colors and we can fit it into one of these, or you can even create a custom pattern and send that pattern to us and we'll produce a roll of film that has that on it. These can be layered. That question comes up to me a lot, if I can layer this and on top of other films, and it can be layered on most films. Very easy to work with, a CAD cut film. Very cool effects that you can do with it. The next one that we have come up here is Spectra Alloy. This is one of my favorite metallic films. It's got a really nice metallic look to it. It's got a good shine and sheen to it. One thing I've got here is temperature concern. If we're doing this in a series of films or doing a multimedia application where I have some that say heat press at 320 degrees like the Spectra Patterns one that we just looked at, this one applies at a much lower temperature. It applies at a 280 degree temperature. And I want to make sure that I do it last. If I do it early in the whole production of it and I'm layering another film on top that is a higher temperature, it tends to dull out the finish a little bit on this. Now this finish isn't affected by when you're washing and drying it, but when you are heat pressing it, it tends to dull it out if I go at a very high temperature. One of the other reasons I really like this film is not just because of the metallic look to it, but it's a very stretchy film. So when I'm working on, say, an athletic garment or something like that that has a spandex or an Under Armour type effect and it's stretchy, got some rebound to the film, this is a really nice one to work with because I can get a specialty effect on that garment, and still it stretches and it breathes and it works with the fabric. So it's a very nice one to work with. One of my favorites. The next one in the lineup is Spectra Foil. This is a very, very shiny film. It has a lot of gloss to it. It's got some special effects in there on the different foils. It is a little bit heavier hand on some of these, and then I've had a couple customers that have shown some concern with that. If it was worked into the garment correctly, and if you educate your customers on that and have some samples for them, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, make sure that they understand what it's like, and they will not have many objections to it after that. If they don't like the way it feels, well, then there's other films that we have that can do very similar effects to the Spectra Foil here, but have a different hand to them. The opal on here, I'm hitting on this one here, and we're going to see it in the design that we'll work on a little bit later. It has a kind of pinkish translucent look to it, and on the darker fabrics like the black shirt that I used for the design we have here, it actually shifted the color on it and was a very neat effect to it. It was a little bit of a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting it, but it came out with a really nice effect on the shirt. So some of the films like the Spectra Foil here, and we'll get to Spectra Bling in a second, you want to take a look and see how they look on those darker garments first. The next one in our lineup here is Spectra Glitz. Spectra Glitz is a bling material. It has a very nice glitter finish to it. It is a smooth texture, so if you run your hand across that, you're not going to feel any roughness or any texture to it, but it's a very smooth feel to it, and it's got a nice pop to it. It is a stretchable film similar to the Alloy, so on any type of your gymnastics uniforms or any of those type of garments, it works very well in being able to stretch and move with the garment. So another very nice material that we have available. Next one up is Spectra Bling. Absolutely love this film. The first time I got my hands on it, fell in love with it. Crazy amount of sparkle. You can't put this onto a garment and not have people see it. Across the room or across a shop or anything like that, somebody moves around with it, it catches their eyes. It's just got an amazing amount of sparkle on it. It looks like somebody took a jar of glitter and dumped it on the shirt, and very eye-catching. Textured finish to it. It does have a little bit of a rough textured finish to it. Very glitter-like finish, for lack of another word there. It is a stretchable material, and I have down on here to be careful with the pink. Similar with that foil, pink in the Spectra Bling is a bit translucent, so when I go and put that onto a black garment, it doesn't show the pink very well. It almost looks like a silverish finish to it. So if you're looking to do any of those maybe breast cancer awareness shirts or something like that onto a black garment, be careful with the pink onto there, because it's not going to come true with a true color on it. The weed box note that I have in here is on there because when we're working with this, especially some fine detail items on it, the Spectra Bling, because it has so much sparkle to it, it's a little bit more difficult to see when you're weeding. So I like to put a box around the design so that I can work into those areas that have maybe a fine line or something on it. And I think I have a picture here. Here's one job with the Spectra Bling. You can see on the shirt there, very fine line detail to it. You can see the amount of bling to that wasn't edited up or anything. That's really the bling that's coming off of it. You can see it right down in here and all across in there. It's truly an amazing film to work with. But like I said, on this design here, I did put a weed box around everything, so I had something to work back into, because that sparkle and bling to it is sometimes hard to see. So you might want to work that way. Spectra Glow in the Dark. This is another cool film that we have available. Like I've got listed here, great for Halloween. Maybe kids going out to trick or treat, add on to their costumes. You could put a skeleton design. I saw some really neat designs last year from different customers they sent me with it, that they were using this film. It does activate for about 4 hours, and one of my customers came back and said that they had a Halloween party where they had all sorts of black lights and stuff there, and the black light really made this pop off. So there's a couple different markets you can think of that use black lights, and you can use this film for that. Spectra Fashion Flock, nice fuzzy feel to it. A lot of people forget about this one when they're looking at multimedia designs, and I think it can add a lot to a design actually, because of it is a different feel, is a different texture to it, and it can almost be an unusual thing. If I'm just adding it as an accent onto there that they don't see right off the bat, and maybe then once they feel it, it gives them a little extra to the garment there. So we can use that in there in a multimedia application effectively. Very soft hand, very fuzzy feel to it. It's very pliable with the garment. Nice material. Oops, clicking on the wrong thing here. And then Spectra Reflect. This is another one of those that I think people kind of forget about a little bit. Obviously the first category I have up here is safety apparel for your fire EMS and police departments, anybody who works on a roadside crew, stuff like that. That's the typical markets everybody's thinking about with this. But it does lend itself well to a lot of other markets. Say we have a nightclub and we can put it on all the staff that's working there. It's easy to spot them in the club. It's also a neat effect for anybody who wants an extra bit of bling on there that's going to go in a low light condition and all that. It does come in 10 different colors. There's 9 colors, and then the main reflect material itself, which is a silverish color. It is available also in the 3M direct reflect material. So there's quite a bit of markets that you can get into this, the obvious one being the safety apparel, but even think like football games or something like that, coach on the sideline or anything there that you want to catch that particular person or have them be easily identifiable. So those are a bunch of the different materials that we've got available. Each and every one of them has their own addition that it gives to a garment. But how do we get from this, a plain garment, which is a neat design here, it's this koi fish design that I've used in a video online before. It's a one color on the shirt obviously here. It's a very striking one. It works well with this dark shirt and the light color on there. But it could be a lot more to it. So how do we get from that to this? Where now I've used a couple different materials, I've layered them in there, taken the design apart a little bit and worked with the different parts, but now I've got a design that just is, yes, it's the same graphic, but it's totally different effect on the shirt. Eye-catching bling on there, we can see it in the gold bling right in there. That's that, and then this greenish up in here, that's that pearl foil that I was telling you about, the opal foil. That was a whitish pink color before we applied it, and as soon as it hit the garment, it changed to this greenish color and came out really nice. And then the blue on here is an alloy film, and I like the way that one lends to the design too. So how do we get from one to the other? So let's look at the design itself. We've got the basic koi fish here, and we're going to jump into the cost of this a little bit first before we dig apart and change the design over. The basic koi fish there, we'll use it as an 11 by 11 design that went onto the shirt. Single color eco film, you're looking at a cost of about $1.57. Not too terrible bad when we get into looking at the overall shirt and adding into it, and we'll look at what you could possibly get out of the shop for that, but $1.57 for that large of a design is a pretty good cost. That design actually wraps around the side of the shirt and goes to the front. With that single color eco film there at $1.57, I can break this design up. Say I wanted to add just the bling portion, do everything else in one color, the koi there that's in the blue right in here, we could leave that as one color along with the waves around it, and I just wanted the bling in there. Well, to do that section, it's not an 11 by 11, it's only 8 by 5 inches. When I calculate that one out, that's only 80 cents that I added to the design. That's not a large cost addition to this design. When I add in the foil went all the way up onto all the waves, so on that one I have to go for the full size of the design. So again, that's 11 by 11 inches, but that's $1.80 right there. If I had just done the foil, just a single application there on the entire design, it wouldn't be much more expensive than the eco film. Now if I want to add in alloy, that one's a little bit more expensive in material. It's a very stretchable, like we said before, it's a specialty film, and that one there, just for the section where the blues are, it works out to be 9 by 8 inches or $1.30. So I have a total down here, but this total is for the second design. For the koi fish on the right with all the different colors, the total cost for that was $3.90 for just the films, and the single color eco film is $1.57. So we can kind of mix and match this. You could do the whole thing as all specialty films, or we could do it as just a pick and choose type deal, and we don't have to use white in the design over here. We could use a different color film mixed with one or all of these films over here to get a design that the customer is going to really key into and see as a value added benefit to them. So what are we going to charge for this shirt? A typical shirt on that basic design, the one that was on the left, just a single color koi fish, it's not unusual for a shop to get $10 to $15 for something like that. That's the cost of the garment and everything included. I see lots of ranging on costs, so I don't like to usually get into a, hey, this is what you should charge. I know that the markets vary from state to state and region to region. So somebody down in, say, Southern California might get a different price than I would up in upstate New York. Or a specialty shop. I've got a friend who's got one down in Atlanta, Georgia. He could do that one on the right, and I've got listed here the one on the right. Let's go and take a look at them again. Get the koi fish with all the different designs in it, and I know maybe in my region I could get $20, $25 for something like that, possibly $30 depending on the design, but where he's at, he wouldn't charge anything less than $35. But he also has a large walk-through traffic. It's a very touristy area. So you have to take a look at what region you're in and what you can get. Some very important things to remember all of this on when you do the design. We talked about the prices. Let me go back to that. For the single CAD color eco film there, we've got the $1.57, and then for the one with all the bling to it, it's $3.90. But how much is your labor cost? And for actually cutting and weeding the design, it's not too terrible on there. Time is the biggest cost for each one of these films. Your biggest factor in everything is you have to heat press each one at a time. You can't do them all at the same time because there is a transfer sheet in with each one of the films, a carrier film that the design is on. So it does take your heat pressing from 1 time to 3. And there's a little bit more to lining everything up, as we'll take a look at. So remember, labor is the biggest cost, being time is the part of that factors in. So when we create the design, we're going to take a look at this in Corel. You'll have a basic design, and I'm going to show you how to add pages, how to get it set up for production and separating out all the different colors. We'll talk about layering and temperatures and the layout of the design and things to consider with that, and I've got a little video to show you also. So let's jump over to Corel, and in Corel we'll bring up here, we've got our koi fish. Now I've already separated this out. We'll start off with a single color design here, and I have added some pages, and I'm going to take you through the process. But this is the single CAD cut design that we started out with. If I go to my view and see simple wireframe, this is exactly what the cutter is going to see in this design. So it doesn't differentiate between what the different layers are going to be if I'm doing different colors or how to separate them out or anything like that. So we'll go back to our enhanced view. I could go through the design and say, well, I like this koi portion right here and I want that to be blue. I can change that to blue, and I can dig around up that little bit of the eye needs to be blue also, and I was going to do this portion of the fins is blue, and start picking and choosing through it, and this portion is going to be gold. I'd selected a bunch of the scales earlier and make those gold, and then we'll pick through on these other ones and make them blue. And on the wave portion of it, we'll make that kind of a translucent. Maybe this will work well. Something that I can do to differentiate the colors and separate them out so that I can tell what's what later on. And that's a little bit bright on that gold for me to see, so we'll mute that down. But what I'm going to do is, once I've got this set up, I could take different portions of it, and a tool that a lot of people forget about or don't know about in Corel is the combine tool. If I take this one over to here, it's a single piece, and then I've got all the scales that I did earlier as a single piece too, and I combine some of those, and that's the tool I'm going to show you. When I hold down my shift key and select the head on here, I have all my weld and trim functions that come up. Now I could do weld, which is right here, and the weld would weld those together if I had an overlap, or I was working with a couple different objects that maybe had interior portions to them. Sometimes the weld doesn't work real well on that, and for those when I'm just trying to make it not a group, because I could hit arrange and then group these, and as a group they are all stuck together, and that's what a lot of people will do with it. And I'll ungroup those, arrange and ungroup. I'm a big fan of shortcut keys. In every one of my videos and webinars I point them out. The shortcuts are right at the end here. So it takes you from 2 or 3 clicks down to just a shortcut key on there. So I'll hit Control. Let's see if it did ungroup. It already ungrouped them. But when I combine these, you can see, let's open up our Object Manager. I've got that one and this one, and it shows in the Object Manager the 2 objects here. If I were to group those, it creates them into a group. I hit Control G. and I can take and change each one of those over there. Or instead of group, what I like to do a lot of times when I'm working with this is the combine tool. And when I hit combine, now it's a single curve. So I'm not working with separate curves in there. If I know that that group is going to be a single piece that I'm going to be working with and want to change the attributes all the way across the board for it, combine is a little bit better option in my opinion. Now if I know later on I may have to ungroup these, say I'm just trying to keep alignment with this portion here and the blue down here on the koi, well, they're two different colors, two different types, different properties and everything on it, and I want to maintain those individual properties and everything about it. So those I would group. I wouldn't combine them, because once I combine them, you'll see that everything will change, and it all changed over the same. So I'm going to hit Control Z to get out of that. So that's the difference between group and combine. A lot of times, like I said, if I'm working with something that's going to be, the attributes are going to be the same all the way through, I'll use the combine feature. If I need to maintain individual attributes of all the different objects within it, I'll use the group function. So on this one here, I'm going to create another page, and I already did it there. So let's show you how to do that. Down at the bottom here, we have this plus symbol right there, and I'll click on that guy, and it creates a new page for me that's blank. So I could create that, go back to my first page, page 1, and maybe I'll take everything here, and I'll copy it, hit Control C, and then go to page 2 and Control V. And in here I could start going through the design and saying, well, I just want the gold portion here, so I'll take this here and delete it, and this and delete it, and get it all down to the one portion that I want. And on page 1 I still have the original design. So I've already done that with page 3 here. I've got it broken into 3 different colors so I can see what's going on with it. Not everything's grouped. I did that a little bit later on after this. But you can see in subsequent pages I just copied and pasted it and then deleted all the other objects out of there. So I only have this one. This would be my gold bling layer for the fish. And then the next one here is going to be my foil, that opal foil all the way around. And you can see these are all together here. And then my last but not least, my alloy film. And these ones were individual objects where I could take them all and select everything, and I could do the combine function, and now everything's all in one. So when I set them up this way, and say I'm going to send it to my cutter, maybe I've got a Roland GX24, or I'm going to send this over to Great Cut or Cut Studio, whatever I'm going to be working with, whatever page I'm on is going to send it over to that. So a lot of times I'll set up my artwork like this, and that also allows me to be able to go through and say, okay, this is my bling layer, my gold bling. How much am I really going to be adding here? I can draw the marquee around it, and up over here it tells me the measurements. So I can take a look at this, and that's on about an 8x5. I can kind of take that 3 and add it over there, so that's about the amount of material that I'm going to add. So 8x5 or 8.355 by 4.74, you guys get the idea. And that way I can calculate my costs and calculate my production and everything else from this. So it's a nice way to be able to separate out your designs and have it all ready. I could also, once I've got these color coded like this, you'll see in an example I'm going to give a little bit later on of a gold progression design, I could print out this page and maybe I could create some boxes over here, and I'll draw a couple boxes, and I've got 3 colors. So actually let's delete that one, and we'll make this a little bit easier. And what I'm doing is dragging that box down. As I drag it down, I'm holding the shift key, so that keeps it in alignment. And then when I get it where I want, I right click, and that makes a copy of that box. So what I could do with each one of these is I could use the fill tool, and I could fill each one of them to match the colors on here, and then maybe make a little label off to the side saying this is gold bling. This one, let's make it the same color. Let's go to a fill on this. We'll just give it a blue. And we're going to try to make this somewhat fast. We'll go with a color that's similar to that, and then this one here. And we could match up the colors in here. I could go in and say I want this color to be that one. Use the eyedropper tool, and now it's exact to it. And we'll take this one and use the eyedropper tool. This is the object properties docker. I'll make that one this blue. Remove my outline. And then last but not least, we'll take this guy here. We have to give it a fill so we can get to the fill dialog, and grab that eyedropper, and I'm going to pick the color right there. and remove it. And now I've got a color key here that I could use and put little labels next to it. And we'll label this one Gold Bling. And then so on and so forth. We could take this object here and do the same thing I did before, and then edit each one of these. And this one's going to be Alloy. And we'll move that over. It's a little close to the design, but this will be a print layer, so it's not going to be something that I would be cutting or anything like that. The idea with this is now I've got a page that I can print out on my printer, and I can use this as a guide later on when I'm working with the design over at the heat press, or we have another operator in the shop that's doing production, and they're going to have a picture guide to go with to know what media is what and how to work with them. So that's a kind of a rundown on how to set up the design. Let's go back over to the presentation. So the basic design, and we added some pages in there. We created some layering in that for production. We created a sheet for whoever's making the design to do in production, and that production sheet also goes into the layout of the design. Some things to consider on this one. This design in particular, let's go back to Corel so you guys can see it while we're working on it. This design in particular, we've got 3 different medias on here. I've got the Bling, Alloy, and oop, I didn't rename that guy, did I? So I'll make that Foil. All 3 of them have different temperatures, and what I'm doing with these guys is arrange and distribute. We're going to put them to the line right. I could have hit the R key, but now they're all nice and neat aligned. What I want to point out on this one is the alloy film that's in there. We've got the Gold Bling and the Foil, which go at a higher temperature than the alloy. And if you remember from me talking earlier, the alloy has to be last because that's the one that's going to be temperature dependent. It's 280 degrees and we don't want to go high on that one. So if I'm going with a higher temperature and I put that alloy down, it's going to dull out a little bit. And we want to avoid that. So it's important maybe on this production sheet I would put down for the operator how things are going to fall out or what order to do or any special instructions that I need for them on that. So let's jump back over to the presentation. So some of the things to consider are that and how they're going to be working at the heat press. And now I have a video that I'm going to talk about a little bit. In here we're doing that 3-color design. You can see I've got the Gold Bling first, and let's play some of this. And I'm going to jump around on the video a little bit. This one there, it's a cold peel or a cool peel, so I let it cool down a little bit after I'd put it on there. And let's jump ahead a little bit on the video, and we'll take the second layer and line it up, and it's giving me some difficulty here because I didn't layer them prior to production. And I'm going to show you another design and how I added the different layers on top of each other, working with the one that's most temperature dependent first, or I'm sorry, the one that's least temperature dependent first, and all the way down to the one that's most susceptible to temperature, being the alloy film last. So I'm putting that whole piece together there where they're all lined up, and because the carrier film there is clear, I can line them up and get it exactly where I want, and the foil is the one that I'm going to hit next. So once I've got it where I want, I can hold down that foil film and I'll peel off the top layer, and then this one's going to be ready to heat press on there. So I'm checking all the alignment and everything. I step back for the camera to catch it, and then remove that layer and everything's lined up. So let's jump ahead a little bit. And you can see that film there we were talking about earlier, the opal foil, where it's the pinkish translucent color, and I want you guys to see this when the heat press hits it because it's really pretty interesting to see, and it's a neat effect to it. I didn't expect this to happen when I first did it, and I'm very pleased with the results, and I've shared it with a lot of people since then. So it was a little whitish before we hit it, and working with the air swinger here. In just a second it'll come back up and we'll be able to move it aside, and you'll see right away, look at how that color changed. So any of these films that are translucent to a certain extent, you have to check them out and make sure that you've got an idea of how they're going to apply once you put it onto a darker garment. And you can see here, like I said, it was a wraparound. It didn't get that portion there, so instead of trying to peel everything off and line it back up again, I just have to move it over on the heat press and I'll hit it again there. And now I can remove all the carrier film. So let's jump ahead a little bit, and I'm taking that one off, and I put the last layer. I've got it all lined up on here, and I'll go ahead and heat press this one on, and we'll end up with a 3-color design. So the key things to look at in this one is the actual production of it. And we talked about production-wise on this material here of how much time it's going to take for each one of these. If I was doing the single color film, I would have been one and done, and it's ready to go. But each one of these heat presses is going to take me a little bit of time, not just in the heat press itself, but in lining up the different layers and getting it all set and putting it on the heat press, letting it cool down if it's one that needs a little bit of a cool peel. All these things add up. So you got to calculate out your total production time before you can look at the end price and figure out how much your overhead is to calculate into that production time. So let's see. Oops, jumped too far ahead. There we go. And that was the finished design. So let's drop this one out. So that's a video kind of going over and pointing out how to layer them up. But let's take a look at another thing here. How am I going to put all those layers together? So this is a gold progression design, kind of the same setup as before, to where I had in Corel Draw. I made those little boxes with all the different labels on them and everything, and I have different colors on here so the operator can figure out where things are going. This is actually a 7-color design. It's a very, very involved one. And lining them up would be pretty difficult if I didn't have some sort of guide. So on this design, we actually cut it and produced it with a 8th layer that we're never going to apply to the shirt, which is just this black eco film that you see here. And with that, I can use and line up all of my different layers. So let's take a look at the first one. There's the black film on the shirt, and I could use this to line up all my subsequent layers and get them all in alignment. Remember, I'm going to be working with my least temperature dependent all the way up to the one that's the most susceptible to any temperature differences. I don't want to go with a low temperature film and then work up to my high temperature films, because I may damage it. So we've got it, that black layer right there, and now you can see I've been layering one on top of the other. The carrier films are clear, so I can see exactly where it's supposed to line up on the film and on the shirt, and I've got that guide of the black eco film down below. If I look in Corel at this design, you can see here I've got it all color-coded, I've got it all separated, and each one of my pages breaks it down into the different films. And with each one of those different films, I can send that over to my cutter. Now, with this design, there's a lot of colors in there. Like I said, we had 7 different colors, and these are all specialty films. This was an example that we did up to be able to show people all the different films and the differences between the golds and everything. It's a very eye-catching design, but how much would you have to charge for something like this? It's going to be very expensive. So when we're looking at designs and how much we can charge for it or how we can add value to it, maybe on that koi fish design, we want to add a little bit of extra to it. And instead of going through all of this in here, maybe we'll do that single color design. And I'd have to change everything back to a single color here. Just give me a second. Grab that. So we've got that single color design, but then the customer wants their portion to stand out. So we're just going to do 2 where the name, say this is a restaurant, a Japanese sushi place or something like that, and they want a single color design there, but the koi portion there we could do with a glitter film or an alloy or something like that to give it a lot of punch. And if we take that koi portion right there, I'll grab the eye and combine this, we can see that that's 5 by 5 basically in there. So that would be another film that we put on there, but it's only adding a little bit of cost. One more step on the heat press, one more with alignment. This is a pretty easy alignment in there. Or maybe on the eye end here we would want to fill that in with another film so that that pops off of it. These are the ways that you can take these films and just by adding a little bit of accent to something, give it a lot more pizzazz and make it jump out to our customers. The whole idea behind this webinar is not just to show you guys how to work with the designs and tell you about the films, but make you think about maybe putting a little accent here or there. Or maybe in this area here, instead of doing a glitter film or something like that in the eye, or on the whole head portion right here, just that section. So on that one we'd have to break that one apart because I'd combined it earlier. But that head section there, maybe we're just going to do that one as a flock material or reflect. Take a look at the different medias that are out there and utilize them so that you can get a little bit more to your customers and get a little bit more out of the cost on the entire job. So let's look back at the presentation. And the gold progression there, you can see, as I was talking about, layering them all. And here we've got the final product. And you can see the layout design sheet right here with everything in it. And there's all the different layers on the shirt. There's quite a difference between those two on that. Again, I don't know how much you could really charge for this. This would be something that goes into a specialty shop. Maybe it's a limited edition. Maybe you're looking at a hair salon and they want to have a design like this, and maybe we'll just do 1 or 2 locks, take this one right in here and make that a gold piece, and we can show that to them. Another thing I want to show you folks, and let me see if I've got the picture here real quick, is I want to show you a design that has all of the different medias on it. If I'm going to be working with a design and I want to be able to show the different medias to a customer, I'm going to need something to show it to them in the shop, because looking at it in a catalog or online doesn't give it justice. So let's take a look at a shirt and see what you can do with that. So what I did to be able to show the customer the different colors and the materials and how they look and feel and react is I created a shirt from our swatch sets. You can get swatch sets on almost any one of the materials, and they'll have a little sample piece of each one of the colors in that material. On the one on the left here, you can see all the different eco-film colors, and then on the right hand side of it there on the left picture are all the different color reflect and reflect medias, and even a glow-in-the-dark sample. On the one on the right in the first row we have our glitz, and then I have the alloy films, and then I've got foil, and the next one to that is flock all the way down. And you can see on the left shirt I got a little smarter and I cut those swatches in half so I had a little bit more room. But most of the swatch sets are only a few dollars. You could get all of them and cut them up. It takes you a little bit of time to make this, but it's a real eye catcher and it's an easy way for you. If somebody's looking at it in a catalog, it looks one way. It looks totally different on the shirt sometimes, and it's a way for us to be able to grab that shirt and bring it over. This is the color that they want, this is the finish and the feel and the texture and the bling, and get them into that multimedia. Get them excited about the colors and what they can do for their job simply by making one of these shirts. I priced it all out. It's right over $40, just over $40 if you got every single one of our swatch sets, and then it'll probably take you a little bit of time to cut them up and put them on there. I think that this shirt took me about half an hour to get them all cut up and applied onto the shirt. So something else we can do for our customers, and another way to be able to show them the multimedia applications and the specialty films that we have and how we can put it in there. So you can see with something like this and all the different designs that we can do, you can make something for your customer that will set them apart from everybody else and give them a design that really has some pop and pizzazz to it. I want to thank everybody for stopping by today and viewing the on-demand webinar. There's more of these webinars, like I said before, on greatgarmentgraphics.com, and keep an eye out for the next webinar in the series. If you have any questions for me or anything I can do to help you, please feel free to contact me at steven@imprintables.com. Visit our website, imprintables.com, or you can give me a phone call direct at 518-630-6655. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I hope to hear from you soon.